So, dear friends, sutta that we should look at today is called the Precipice. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can see it on the screen, or if you want to look in the book, Connected Discourses of the Buddha, it's on page 1865. I'm going to invite Katrina to read the footnotes. There they are. And this here is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of the Precipice in the Connected Discourses, the section on the truths. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha on Mount Vulture Peak. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Come, bhikkhus, let us go to Patibana Peak for the day's abiding." "Yes, Venerable Sir," those bhikkhus replied. Then the Blessed One, together with a number of bhikkhus, went to Patibana Peak. A certain bhikkhu saw the steep precipice of Patibana Peak and said to the Blessed One, "That precipice is indeed steep, Venerable Sir. That precipice is extremely frightful. Is there, Venerable Sir, any other precipice steeper and more frightful than that one?" He answered, "There is, bhikkhu. But what, Venerable Sir, is that precipice steeper and more frightful than that one?" Those ascetics and Brahmins, bhikkhu, who do not understand as it really is, this is suffering, who do not understand as it really is, this is the origin of suffering, who do not understand as it really is, this is the cessation of suffering, who do not understand as it really is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They delight in volitional formations that lead to birth, in volitional formations that lead to aging, in volitional formations that lead to death, in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Delighting in such volitional formations, they generate volitional formations that lead to birth, generate volitional formations that lead to aging, generate volitional formations that lead to death, generate volitional formations that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Having generated such volitional formations, they tumble down the precipice of birth, tumble down the precipice of aging, tumble down the precipice of death, tumble down the precipice of sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. They are not freed from birth, aging, and death, not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, not freed from suffering, I say. You have a wonderful footnote.
Well, the footnote says, "This passage offers an interesting condensed version of dependent origination, paticcasamuppada. Not understanding the Four Noble Truths is ignorance, avidya. The phrase, they delight in, apiramanti, volitional formations that lead to birth, implies craving, which gives rise to delight, rati, apirati, when one's craving is fulfilled. The phrase, they generate volitional formations that lead to birth, jati sangvatanike sankare atisankaronti, that phrase clearly points to the volitional formations. And falling into the precipice of birth, aging, and death obviously corresponds to the last two links in the series. So here we find ignorance and craving in conjunction with volitional formations, bringing new birth, aging, and death, undergone by consciousness together with name and form.
So this abhiramati, ramati is delighting. It's possible to delight in something noble. Elsewhere in the suttas, we see, do I delight in solitude? That's one of the reflections that a recluse would have. But in this case, delighting in volitional formations, this is what is, in a nutshell, how karma comes to be created. In a different translation, Bhante Sujato is saying, he translated as choices. They have made choices that lead to rebirth. So a choice is a kind of a choice or a decision. Can you detect in your mind a difference between a thought or an observation or an experience or even a perception where the basic attitude is one of stillness and non-action, and we're simply being, in a way, like having a receptive attitude to what we experience and what we know. And then it's a different kind of mentality altogether where the decision is made. And it doesn't mean that, I decided that I need to go have lunch, or I decided that I'm going to take an action. It could even be, I decided that I'm going to think about this. I decided I'm not going to worry about that. I decided I am going to worry about this. I decided that I really like this one. I decided that I don't like that one. I think if we can catch a hold of, like, the flavor of what's going on in the mind when we are doing a mental karma. There's three kinds of karma actions that are leading to these karmic results: an action of the mind, an action of the speech, and an action of the body. So if I thinking of a wholesome example, if I'm planning to take a meditation retreat and I take care of some of my chores, thinking, let me get these chores out of the way so that I won't worry about them during my meditation retreat. And if I go to the place of meditation and I make that place clean and tidy, and I say, let me make this space clean just as I want for my mind to be clean when I come in to undergo meditation. So the aspect of thinking about those two things and planning those things, those are mental actions. Then if I talk to myself or if I talk to somebody else about these things, I'm taking a retreat from 5 o'clock this evening until 5 o'clock Tuesday evening. And so I had to and I'm doing this every week, so I had to send an email out to all my colleagues saying, well, I'm going to be on retreat each week from 5 o'clock on Sunday until 5 o'clock on Tuesday. And so that's a speech, it's something decisive, it's an action. And I'm giving an example in terms of a wholesome karma, because to have the balanced mind, we shouldn't think that all karma formation is taking us to hell or taking us to a state of affliction, a sorrowful state of suffering. It's taking us to the round of rebirth. And so then within the round of rebirth, it contains old age and death. Whatever comes to be, comes to cease, comes to have aging. whatever is aging will come to an end. And then this sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress, at a minimum, that is going to be the distress of the round if I have made these choices about having to do with becoming, having to do with clinging to existence or clinging to pleasures or clinging to anything at all. If I've made those kind of choices, to whatever extent I'm clinging, there's going to be some pain involved. And if I have the some kind of understanding about what Nibbana is, if I understand that aging and death is optional and it's possible to have a way out of it, but I have not gotten to that way, I've not developed the Dhamma eye, and I'm coming to the end of my time. I'm seeing, I'm impending the decrepitude of the body and perhaps the decrepitude of the mind, and I'm saying, I forgot to practice for liberation. My life can come to an end, and I didn't reach the goal during this lifetime. And so that could be a cause for sorrow and lamentation, realizing that I'm going to have to go on and on after this. I'm just going to jump to a different sutta. This is called Rebirth by Choice. And say here, we take a mendicant who has faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. They think, if only when my body breaks up after death, I would be reborn in the company of well-to-do aristocrats. They settle on that thought, stabilize it, and develop it. Those choices and meditations of theirs, developed and cultivated like this, lead to rebirth there. This is the path and practice that leads to rebirth there. And likewise, they could decide to be reborn among the well-to-do Brahmins, the well-to-do householders. They could choose to be reborn among the gods of the four great kings who are long-lived, beautiful, and very happy. They could choose to be reborn among the gods of the 33, the gods of Yama, the joyful gods, the gods who love to create, the gods who control the creation of others. And whatever they think, if they are having faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom, but these mendicants have not cognized the Four Noble Truths. They've not awakened the Dhamma eye, but they still have some other good qualities, and they're practicing for a heavenly existence. And they can have that. And this is going on and on with so many different kinds of heavenly existence that they can come to. But that's kind of like the upper boundary, the other upper limit of what's possible. So then, if we've got this human body, and our human body is subject to so much stress because we only get to live up to 105 years at the maximum, and we have aches and pains in the body. We have mental limitations that the mind becomes forgetful. We have these emotional tendencies which are stressful. There's so many aspects of the human existence which are dukkha. This is why the human existence, in a certain way, has got the potential for opening to wisdom, because we realize that the cycle of samsara has that stressful quality. In some of these heavenly realms, which are very long-lived, everything they taste, see, hear, smell, and touch is very pleasant, and their thoughts are very pleasant, and their life is extremely long, and they might not realize they might not develop the spiritual urgency to develop wisdom and to get out of the cycle of rebirth. So only when one realizes what the goal is, the goal of here, this is how it's given in this other sutta, rebirth by choice. If only I might realize the undefiled freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom in this very life, having realized it with my own insight due to the ending of defilements, then they could realize this undefiled freedom of heart, freedom by wisdom in this very life. And then having realized it with their own insight, that means the Dhamma eye is open. And coming to the ending of defilements, that's the ending of greed, hatred, and delusion, then that mendicant is not reborn anywhere. So I felt that these two suttas are sort of going like a pair. There's another sutta I have where it's kind of a similar story, but the bhikkhu is doing a Dhutanga practice of behaving like a dog. In other words, eating the food from a bowl on the floor and being naked and so forth. And that person has the possibility to be reborn as a dog. So that we have today, the one on the precipice is so interesting because it's saying, how does it happen? I'm going to go back to Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation because that's the one we're in. And how it happens. Okay, they don't have that understanding. They delight in volitional formations that lead to birth. Delight in volitional formations that lead to aging. Even they delight in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, pleasure, and despair. We have to recognize, even though someone who hasn't thought about it might think, well, this human life is okay, I don't mind. Of course, it's unpleasant once in a while, but it's mostly okay. And I don't mind having the aches and pains, and I don't mind if my loved ones die or if I'm facing different kinds of uncertainty. I can just be content and accept that. And I'm just satisfied with this life, and I want to go on in this life. That delighting in getting more existence leads to getting more existence. And getting more existence inevitably does also include this sorrow, lamentation, pain, pleasure, pain, displeasure, and despair. So the identification of the self with this existence is one of the important keys to know whether we're still kind of like going on the merry-go-round or whether we've stepped off. When we step off the merry-go-round, that identification is not happening anymore. If I can read ahead, this next paragraph gives another aspect of what is going to be different when we step off the merry-go-round. The Buddha said, But bhikkhu, those, and instead of saying suffering, I'm going to say dukkha, because it's well, dukkha has a wider meaning than suffering. It's the whole range of the experience of this life being out of kilter, being not a safe refuge, having that vague feeling like I don't remember the name of the singer. She has a song that goes, "Is this all there is?" All the way down to extreme anguish.
It's Peggy Lee.
Peggy Lee, thank you. Peggy Lee is a lot older than me, but I once saw Peggy Lee in a nightclub in Washington, and she was having a comeback tour, and she sang, "Is this all there is?" Anyway, dukkha. Those ascetics who understand as it really is, this is dukkha. This is, and when you say that you understand it within your own experience because you've really faced it with complete openness and total honesty. And also because of empathy and the interconnection. You really understand the dukkha of externally other beings in the world. So with the full honesty and complete openness, and without going in denial or without making excuses or without saying it's not real, you see how it is for beings in the world and how beings suffer so much. So they understand as it really is, this is suffering. This is dukkha. This is the cause of dukkha. This is the cessation of dukkha. This is the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. With that, with the Dhamma opened, they do not delight in volitional formations that lead to birth, nor in volitional formations that lead to aging, nor in volitional formations that lead to death, nor in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. So the thing that has gone is this delight. So we've heard about tanha, which is craving, or you could say thirst. And we've heard about upadana, which is often translated as clinging or holding on to what's desired or what's identified with. But then, so this delighting is bringing out another aspect of that. It's like, how does it feel when you're really thirsty and you finally get a hold of a drink of pure, fresh, cool water? You take that water and you like it. We choose it, we like it, we delight in it, we relish it. Later on, we could look back and we could remember, oh, that glass of water was so right on the mark. It was just what I wanted. So when we stepped off the merry-go-round, it's a much more detached kind of a feeling tone. The water is still cool, it's still pure, it's still refreshing for the body, but there's not the same kind of grasping after the experience. The attitude is equanimous, in the sense we know this glass of water is just right, but that's only a momentary experience. It's not the whole picture. And we see just because this glass of water is tasty, if I had to keep on drinking more and more and more water, it would soon become not tasty because the body and mind would change and I wouldn't want water anymore. And so then it could become unpleasant to me. So whether the water is pleasant or unpleasant is just like a combination of factors that is arising at a moment. And you just say, okay, well, this is pleasant, but there's not the excitement about it. Not the identification, not the preference that, like the mind wants to get into the pleasant experience and doesn't want to be in an unpleasant experience. So by this not delighting, the mind remains calm. The mind is not getting excited by any kind of volitional formation. And then not delighting, they do not generate volitional formations that lead to growth. Do not generate volitional formations that lead to aging. Do not generate volitional formations that lead to death. Now we still have ordinary practical volitions. So after this, I'm going to shave my head because it's the new moon day, and I'm going to have a ceremony with my colleagues because it's the new moon day, and then I'm going to enter into my 2-day retreat. So I have those volitional formations, but they don't have to be the kind of volitional formations that lead to rebirth. Because why? You could say it's what's accompanying it, or what's the adverb, like how. So if they're volitional formations accompanied by craving, accompanied by sensual desire, accompanied by aversion, accompanied by the craving for rebirth, for existence, accompanied by a desire for annihilation. So when those companion features are not there, or we're not generating formations that are touched with those dangerous qualities, which are the qualities which would lead to birth. Did the footnote say what that means and what that is in Pali, that generating?
Jati samvattanike sankare.
In a more ugly English, would we say that they don't?
That is what it says in Pali.
They don't form
Sankare
formations.
apisankaronti.
This forming the formations, that's the creation of a kamma. So there is kamma, which is an ethical action that has a karmic result later on, or subsequently in causation, whether it's immediately or much later. And then after kamma is generated, there is the fruit of kamma. And so then the fruit of kamma, not having generated such volitional formations, that do not tumble down the precipice of birth, nor tumble down the precipice of aging, nor tumble down the precipice of death, nor tumble down the precipice of sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. They are freed from birth, aging, and death, freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, freed from suffering, I say. And the Buddha has made a promise that in this very life, even while we still have a physical body, if we realize the goal for ourselves, it is possible to be freed from the cycle of rebirth and from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Freed from dukkha, and then it's just the remaining karma, the residue of karma that you have because you're still alive and still have your 5 aggregates, that you will still undergo the pains associated with the physical body, and you'll still undergo the dying process before the final breakup of this life. But with that final breakup, it's finished. So you're just bearing, carrying this one more remainder of this life. What I'm saying, stepping off the merry-go-round, if we cast our imagination back to the time of the Buddha, in which it seemed like in the popular imagination, the heavens didn't seem to be that far away. The gods didn't seem to be that abstract or that far away. There was a class of philosophers who were skeptical, but there was also a great mass of people and practitioners who were not skeptical, who were faithful, and who were, kind of like striving to get to that heavenly birth, like in that other sutta that I was mentioning. And so then it was the Buddha's persistent, courageous, intelligent investigation and exploration internally, and trying to find where really is this way to heaven, this way to this permanent transfiguration of the soul, to be united with God in this permanently blissful state. And because of his courage and his intelligence and his looking so deeply into it, that he was kind of finding that it was like peeling an onion, that there was at the very center, you didn't find it. You didn't find anything. So it was just taking away the layers and layers and layers. And when it's all disassembled, realizing, oh, it's empty of this permanent self, this permanent soul. And actually, I don't need to do anything. And I don't need to be afraid of the destruction of the self, because I already just disassembled the whole thing and came to emptiness at the center. An action that's required for my salvation is not something that I'm aiming to achieve by a lot of actions. It's just a transformation of insight and knowing. And it does have this quality that, I can visualize as this stepping aside. I could compare it to, when the pandemic started and we were in seclusion, we're here in the monastery and we're trying to say, what do we have to do? Because we don't know really what the danger is, where it's coming from, or how to make that danger go away. And so we can speculate and debate, and one person has one idea and one person has another idea and a third person has another idea, and you can debate and debate and debate, and there's no basis to choose one idea over another idea, because none of them know. None of them actually know how to get out of it. And so maybe you'd follow the person who has the strongest personality, or follow the one who's the oldest, but they still don't know. You're just following blindly on somebody because it's easier to follow somebody than to keep quarreling about it. There could be, like a wise person comes and they actually know how it works and how to be safe. And so because of having that different knowledge, it's like there's, I don't know what, a school of fish swirling around in a puddle, and then there's somebody else who's just standing up on the shore, and they're in a different realm, and they can see it in a completely different way. And this is kind of like what I see. It's so difficult to actually translate it, like how to explain in words what happens when we stop going around this merry-go-round with delighting in these volitional formations that are generating and generating and generating all of these actions, trying to find a way out. And the more we spin around trying to find a way out, the more we keep locking ourselves to being in the same spin cycle. But then when one steps aside, they're not spinning anymore. They don't have to do anything. And yet, well, they don't have to be involved in trying to do a lot of merits to help people. Nevertheless, the presence of such individuals in the world is transformational to the world, because it gives something that people can see, that there is something other than the spin cycle. It's possible to stand aside from that. When we're ordinary, common people who have not yet opened our Dhamma eye, when we do meritorious deeds, that would be acts of generosity and virtue. It's the starting point of realizing there is suffering and there is not suffering. And each moment we can choose, will I take the actions that will contribute to increasing and sustaining the suffering in the world, or will I avoid those? And if the things that I'm doing is harmless, not contributing to building up and sustaining and perpetuating the suffering in the world, those kinds of deeds, we can do them again and again and again. They won't really hurt us. But in another way, when we're coming back here, coming to these volitional formations, if you do a lot of charity work and you're doing it thinking, oh, may I be reborn as an aristocrat, or oh, may I be reborn as a god in the 33 heavens, by the virtue of this merit, I dedicate this merit for this kind of a rebirth, then you're doing an action, a karma, and you're looking for a particular kind of fruition, and you can get what you're aiming for. Or if you feel I'm a dirty, bad person and I deserve to suffer, and while I'm doing my unskillful stuff because of circumstances or some reason, and I feel that I deserve to be punished, then I can get a life in which I'll be punished to the whatever extent I feel that I deserve punishment. So we get to choose our own sentence in the hell realm according to this. So these are actions that are with those kind of intentions. So when we wake up, we're not having that type of volitional formation anymore. And when I say not doing anything, it doesn't mean that we don't sweep the monastery, or we don't give a Dhamma talk, or we don't go and visit the sick, or we don't do a chanting on behalf of the deceased, or we don't do whatever kind of kind and useful deeds that are within our place in life. We do all those things, but we're not doing them with the mind which wants another existence. And just every once in a while, after you read the suttas, practice meditation, ponder about the meaning of the suttas, associate with other practitioners, from time to time, you forget to have a wrong view, or from time to time, your right view comes up on top. You know, it's like if the mind is, instead of a subconscious underwater and a consciousness above the water, so the mind is like a beach ball that's sort of like turning, and whatever's above the water is the part that you're able to know about at the particular moment in time. So then sometimes you're dwelling in right view, even if you don't yet know how to hold on to it and how to really dwell there. And when your right view comes up, it's got a different flavor. It has this flavor of freedom, and it also does have this flavor of this not delighting, not reaching after, not grasping, but just the pleasantness of being equanimous, of being equal-minded, being able to see what's coming along, seeing what we want to do or what we're choosing to do, and keeping that equal-minded attitude, which is stable, pliable, flexible, malleable, serene, open to just see what we got right now, just exactly the way it is. Is that enough for now?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Let us pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. The perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. So completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma.
The Blessed One's disciples,
who have practiced well,